The roar of engines cut through the early morning mist, a mechanical howl that reverberated across the rolling fields of northern France. The sun had barely pierced the horizon, casting a ghostly orange glow on the frost-covered terrain. In the skies above, a formation of German Messerschmitt Bf-109s sliced through the clouded expanse, sleek silhouettes glinting in the rising light. Their pilots, hardened by years of combat, exuded confidence. A confidence born of countless victories, a confidence that would soon meet a trial unlike any they had faced before. Below, on the muddy airstrips hastily carved out for the Allied push, the P-47 Thunderbolt rested, its broad, barrel-like fuselage catching the first rays of dawn. To the German pilots who had flown over enemy territory for years, this aircraft was an oddity, almost laughable in its size and shape. Its round, bulky form and stubby wings made it look less like a weapon of war and more like a flying milk bottle, a nickname whispered in jest among Luftwaffe ranks. Some even called it slow, cumbersome, and easily outmaneuvered. No one anticipated that this seemingly clumsy machine would soon redefine aerial combat. The scene was set for an encounter that would leave an indelible mark on the air war over Europe. In the cockpit of a P-47, the pilot adjusted his goggles and tightened his grip on the controls. His face, smudged with dirt and sweat, betrayed a mixture of determination and apprehension. Unlike the agile Messerschmitts he was about to face, the Thunderbolt was a beast, heavier, less nimble, but armed with a ferocity that few enemies could truly fathom. Its 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, mounted with deadly precision, promised a storm of lead that would challenge even the most confident German ace. For the Luftwaffe, the sight of these massive aircraft approaching on the horizon was met with derision. A milk bottle in the sky, they joked, banking sharply to get a better view. The pilots' laughter, light and casual at first, echoed across the sky, blending with the wind rushing past their cockpits. They had faced nimble Spitfires and wily P-38 Lightnings, but this lumbering American, was different. Yet, in their underestimation they overlooked a crucial truth. The Thunderbolt was designed not for elegance but for endurance and power. It was a weapon of attrition, built to survive punishment that would cripple other aircraft and deliver destruction in return. As the German formation dived toward the unsuspecting bombers and ground targets below, the P-47 pilots began their climb. The engines thundered, each beat resonating like the pulse of an approaching storm. In that moment the world seemed to narrow to the sky above and the earth below, a tension that tightened every nerve. The pilots knew the risks. Each encounter in the sky could mean life or death, but they also carried a steely resolve. They had trained for this, drilled for this, yet nothing in their experience could fully prepare them for what was about to unfold. The Thunderbolt's guns were cold yet lethal. Each barrel, aligned with meticulous care, was capable of unleashing a torrent of firepower that could shatter the wings of a Messerschmitt before it even realized the danger. In the cockpit, the pilot's finger hovered over the trigger, anticipation mingling with fear. He had been briefed, trained, and rehearsed, but the true test would come in the split seconds of combat, when hesitation could mean the difference between victory and annihilation. Above, the German pilots maintained their casual superiority. They banked sharply, diving on targets with practiced ease. Their confidence was palpable, almost tangible, carried in the rhythmic clatter of machine guns and the occasional crackle of the radio. They spoke in clipped commands, exchanged quips, and glanced at each other with the camaraderie of warriors accustomed to triumph. To them, the Thunderbolt was a curiosity, a minor obstacle in a theater where speed and precision had always ruled. But as the distance closed, subtle signs began to shift the balance. The P-47s, once distant and unthreatening, now loomed with imposing presence. Their engines emitted a growl that seemed disproportionate to their size, a sound that carried menace rather than humor. The pilots in the German cockpits sensed it, a vibration in the air, an unspoken warning that the encounter ahead would defy their expectations. The once mocked milk bottle was transforming in their eyes into a predator poised to strike. The first shots were almost imperceptible at first, sharp staccato bursts that ripped through the morning air. And then came the reality of the Thunderbolt's armament, 8.50 caliber machine guns that fired with relentless precision, each round capable of tearing through fuselage and wing alike. German pilots, accustomed to preying on lighter, more fragile aircraft, suddenly found themselves in a nightmare scenario. The bullets traced fiery paths through the sky, turning confidence into chaos, laughter into panic. In those critical moments, time seemed to stretch. Maneuvers that had once been instinctive now demanded split-second calculation. Messerschmitts that had zipped past flak and fighters without consequence now found themselves caught in a storm of lead that allowed no room for error. Pilots who had once prided themselves on skill and experience realized that the Thunderbolt's design, its durability, its firepower, its sheer bulk, was not a weakness but a carefully honed advantage. The aircraft absorbed punishment, shrugged off damage that would have grounded other fighters, and returned fire with lethal efficiency. Below, the ground war raged in parallel. Bombers pressed forward, relying on the Thunderbolts to shield them from the Luftwaffe's assaults. The P-47s, initially underestimated, now carved corridors of safety, their machine guns blazing a path through swarms of enemy fighters. Soldiers on the ground would later recall seeing trails of smoke and fragments of aircraft falling from the sky, testimony to a battle that had begun with ridicule and ended in awe. The Thunderbolt had become both protector and avenger, a guardian of the skies whose presence reshaped the dynamics of aerial warfare. The psychological impact was immediate. German pilots, once buoyed by superiority, now faced a sobering realization: they had misjudged the Thunderbolt entirely. Its apparent awkwardness belied a tactical genius in engineering, a combination of endurance, firepower, and pilot-centric design that turned the tide in the air. What had been mockery became respect, respect edged with fear. Stories of encounters spread quickly, whispered among units and shared over crackling radio channels. The milk bottle in the sky had proven itself a nightmare, a symbol of American ingenuity and determination that no one in the Luftwaffe could ignore. In the cockpit, the Thunderbolt pilots felt a mixture of triumph and grim resolve. Victory in aerial combat was never certain, and each engagement carried the weight of potential loss. Yet in these moments they embodied a philosophy that transcended mere machinery, the idea that innovation, courage, and resilience could overturn expectation. They had flown into the derision of their enemies and emerged as instruments of precision and power, their aircraft transformed in the eyes of all who witnessed it. As the morning unfolded, the clouds above seemed to ripple with the energy of battle, a shifting canvas of smoke, light, and motion. The German pilots, forced into evasive maneuvers, could only adapt, learning in real time the lethal calculus of underestimating the P-47. Every turn, dive, and climb was met with a new form of resistance, each encounter reshaping the narrative of air combat over Europe. The Thunderbolt was no longer an oddity, it was a force to be reckoned with, a testament to the ingenuity of its designers and the courage of those who flew it. By the time the engagements ended and the sky began to clear, the transformation was complete. The laughter of the Luftwaffe had faded into stories of caution and respect. The Thunderbolt, once a target of derision, had earned its place in the annals of aerial warfare. Its 8.50 caliber guns had rained destruction, not as a spectacle of chaos, but as a demonstration of precision, endurance, and tactical brilliance. In those skies over Europe, the P-47 Thunderbolt proved a simple truth: appearances can deceive and underestimation can be fatal. The pilots returned to their bases, some elated, some humbled, all changed. The milk bottle had become a legend, its impact etched into the collective memory of a generation of airmen. From the muddy airstrips to the highest altitudes of combat, the Thunderbolt had shown that strength often comes in unexpected forms, and that courage, coupled with ingenuity, can turn even a bulky, ridiculed fighter into a nightmare for the unprepared. The story of the P-47 was no longer one of mockery, it was a story of respect, awe, and the relentless power of human innovation in the crucible of war. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt in combat begins not with accolades, but with skepticism. Its first encounters with German aircraft were met with ridicule. Pilots who had fought against Spitfires, Hurricanes, and even nimble P-38 Lightnings had their routines honed for speed and agility. They relied on outmaneuvering opponents, striking with precision, and disappearing before retaliation. The P-47, however, defied these conventions. Its enormous fuselage and stubby wings seemed, at first glance, cumbersome and vulnerable. Yet it was precisely this combination of bulk and power that would become its greatest advantage. By the spring of 1943, the Thunderbolt began to arrive in Europe in significant numbers. American squadrons, eager to bring new firepower to the skies, deployed the P-47 with cautious optimism. The first missions were revealing. Pilots climbed into their cockpits, feeling the weight of the massive radial engine beneath them, and the unfamiliar heft of the aircraft. Its reputation for toughness preceded it, yet it still inspired doubt. Would it survive the dogfights against the experienced Luftwaffe pilots who had dominated European skies for years? The initial engagements tested the P-47 in harsh ways. German pilots, flying lighter and faster Messerschmitts, assumed superiority and attacked with confidence. In the early clashes, the Thunderbolt's lack of agility seemed a liability. Yet as pilots discovered its unique qualities, a different picture emerged. The P-47 was built to endure punishment. Its radial engine, encased in a thick air-cooled cowling, could sustain hits that would cripple other aircraft. Its armor plating protected the pilot and vital components. Bullets that tore through other fighters often glanced off the Thunderbolt, leaving it relatively intact. The turning point came when American pilots began leveraging the aircraft's firepower. Equipped with 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, the Thunderbolt could deliver a devastating broadside in a concentrated burst. German pilots, initially scoffing at the seemingly lumbering fighters, soon realized the deadly precision of these attacks. One well-aimed burst could rip apart a Messerschmitt's wing, puncture the fuselage, or ignite the engine. The Thunderbolt was slow to maneuver, but it required only a fraction of a second to unleash a firestorm that could decimate a nimble opponent. One notable encounter in 1943 vividly illustrates this shift. A squadron of P-47s was escorting American bombers over the Ruhr Valley. The German fighters dove from above, confident in their superiority. They laughed and exchanged taunts over the radio, mocking the bulk of the American aircraft. Yet as they closed in, the Thunderbolts responded with a coordinated volley. The concentrated firepower was staggering. Within moments, several Messerschmitts were trailing smoke, their pilots forced into frantic evasive maneuvers. The psychological impact on the Luftwaffe was immediate. Confidence gave way to caution, mockery to wary respect. The Thunderbolt's endurance became equally legendary. Unlike other fighters that might falter after sustained combat, the P-47 could continue fighting even after sustaining severe damage. Pilots recounted returning to base with large portions of their wings shredded, control surfaces compromised, and engines pockmarked by bullets, yet still flying. This durability allowed pilots to take risks others could not, engaging in head-on confrontations and ground attack missions with a confidence previously unseen. The combination of firepower and survivability was transforming the air war. The shift was not just tactical but strategic. As more Thunderbolts entered service, they began to dominate escort and fighter-bomber roles. German pilots adapted, realizing they could no longer rely on traditional hit-and-run tactics. The Luftwaffe's previously effective methods were now challenged by the Thunderbolt's unique design. Pilots who had expected easy victories found themselves outmatched in firepower, outgunned in direct engagements, and continually surprised by the aircraft's ability to absorb punishment and retaliate with deadly efficiency. Individual stories from pilots highlight the human element behind the statistics. One American pilot, Lieutenant James "Jimmy" Harrington, described his first encounter with a formation of Bf-109s over Cologne. He recalls laughing at the thought of facing these experienced aces with his bulky P-47, only to realize within seconds that the aircraft was unlike anything he had flown before. Harrington described the exhilaration and terror of pressing the trigger, watching rounds tear into the enemy plane, and feeling the vibrations through the cockpit as if the very sky had become a weapon. For him and his comrades, these encounters redefined the meaning of air superiority. The P-47 also proved its worth in ground attack roles. Its heavy armament, combined with its ability to absorb damage, made it ideal for strafing enemy positions, convoys, and installations. Soldiers on the ground marveled at the ferocity of its attacks. In one account, a platoon under fire from German positions witnessed the Thunderbolt swoop low, unleashing its 8.50 caliber machine guns in a continuous storm. The result was devastating to enemy fortifications and morale. The aircraft's effectiveness in both air-to-air and air-to-ground roles cemented its place in Allied strategy. The German perspective shifted dramatically. Pilots who had initially mocked the Thunderbolt now approached each encounter with caution. Tactics evolved. They learned to avoid head-on confrontations, targeting the Thunderbolt from angles that minimized exposure to its guns. Dogfights became more calculated, less aggressive. The Thunderbolt had forced the Luftwaffe to rethink engagement strategies, highlighting the profound impact a single aircraft type could have on the broader course of the war. The legacy of the Thunderbolt's combat performance was reflected in the records of both sides. P-47 squadrons achieved impressive kill ratios, often against experienced German pilots. Meanwhile, Luftwaffe pilots developed a grudging respect, acknowledging the aircraft's unique combination of firepower, durability, and versatility. Memoirs from German aces recount the terror and frustration of facing what they once considered a joke in the sky. The P-47 had turned ridicule into reputation, earning a place among the most feared Allied fighters of the conflict. Beyond the battlefield, the Thunderbolt symbolized a broader shift in aviation engineering. Its design prioritized pilot safety, firepower, and mission adaptability over traditional notions of speed and maneuverability. The success of the P-47 challenged prevailing ideas about what constituted an effective fighter aircraft, influencing the development of future generations of warplanes. Its story serves as a reminder that innovation often lies not in elegance or sleekness, but in resilience, adaptability, and the capacity to redefine the rules of engagement. By late 1944, the P-47 had become a fixture in the European theater. Entire squadrons were trained to leverage its strengths, coordinating attacks that combined air superiority missions with close air support for ground forces. The aircraft's presence altered the Luftwaffe's operational planning, forcing them to dedicate more resources to countering a threat that had once been dismissed. The Thunderbolt's impact was both immediate in battle and enduring in the strategic calculus of war. The cumulative effect of these engagements was a transformation in the perception of air combat. The P-47 demonstrated that strength and effectiveness could take forms unexpected by traditional doctrine. German pilots learned the hard way that dismissing a seemingly awkward adversary could result in catastrophic losses. American pilots, in turn, discovered that mastery of an aircraft like the Thunderbolt required not only skill, but a willingness to exploit its unique attributes fully: firepower, armor, and altitude performance. Together, these elements reshaped the aerial battlefield, redefining what it meant to fight and survive in the skies over Europe. Stories of the Thunderbolt's encounters spread rapidly. Pilots exchanged tales of near misses, miraculous returns, and devastating volleys that shattered enemy formations. Ground crews and support personnel witnessed the aftermath, repairing aircraft that bore the scars of intense combat yet remained capable of flight. The P-47's resilience inspired confidence across units, creating a culture of courage and aggressive tactics that leveraged every aspect of the aircraft's design. In retrospect, the P-47 Thunderbolt stands as a testament to the interplay between technology, strategy, and human courage. Its initial reception, mocked as a milk bottle, belies the profound effect it had on the war in Europe. Through a combination of engineering brilliance, pilot skill, and tactical innovation, the Thunderbolt transformed from an object of ridicule into a cornerstone of Allied air power. Its story encapsulates the drama, danger, and unexpected triumphs of aerial warfare, illustrating how determination and ingenuity can overturn expectation and shape history. As the war progressed, the Thunderbolt continued to dominate in theaters beyond Europe. Its performance in the Pacific, where ruggedness and firepower were equally crucial, reinforced its reputation as one of the most effective fighter-bombers of the conflict. Pilots carried forward lessons learned in Europe, adapting tactics to diverse environments and mission profiles, further cementing the Thunderbolt's legacy. Ultimately, the tale of the P-47 Thunderbolt is not just about an aircraft. It is about the men who flew it, the strategies they employed, and the adversaries they confronted. It is about the intersection of fear, respect, and awe, where laughter turns into disbelief, and mockery into admiration. In every engagement, the Thunderbolt proved that appearances could be deceiving, that power often hides in unexpected places, and that those who dared to underestimate it did so at their peril. By the time the war in Europe drew to a close, the Thunderbolt's reputation was firmly established. German pilots spoke of it with a mix of reverence and frustration, acknowledging the role it had played in shaping the outcomes of aerial engagements. American pilots celebrated it as a reliable, deadly, and versatile fighter. Its legacy endured not only in the records of kills and missions but in the stories, memoirs, and testimonies of those who had witnessed its impact firsthand. The P-47 Thunderbolt's journey from mocked curiosity to feared instrument of war offers a narrative rich in drama, heroism, and technological brilliance. It reminds us that in the crucible of conflict, underestimation can be fatal, courage can be transformative, and innovation can redefine the very rules of engagement. Each dogfight, each mission, and each return to base tells a story of determination, ingenuity, and the relentless pursuit of victory in the skies over Europe. As the smoke of battle cleared and the war in Europe edged toward its final chapters, the legacy of the P-47 Thunderbolt had been firmly cemented. What had begun as a curious, almost laughable aircraft, a flying milk bottle, as German pilots had once scoffed, had proven itself in the most unforgiving crucible of combat. Its reputation had transformed from mockery to awe, from derision to respect, leaving an indelible mark on both the pilots who flew it and the enemies who faced it. The Thunderbolt story is one of resilience, ingenuity, and the unforeseen consequences of underestimation, a story that continues to resonate in the annals of military aviation history. The men who piloted these massive fighters carried more than just the responsibility of their own survival. They bore the weight of their squadrons, of the bombers they escorted, and of the countless lives on the ground who relied on their protection. Each mission into enemy territory demanded courage, precision, and an unwavering belief in the capabilities of the aircraft beneath them. The Thunderbolt, with its 8.50 caliber machine guns and rugged construction, became more than a plane. It became an extension of their will, a symbol of the determination that defined the Allied air campaign. For the pilots who faced the Luftwaffe in the skies over Europe, the first encounters with the P-47 were filled with skepticism. Yet, as battles raged and the Thunderbolt's true potential revealed itself, perceptions shifted dramatically. Stories from German aces recount the shock of encountering an aircraft that could absorb punishment and return fire with lethal effectiveness. Confidence turned to caution, derision gave way to a grudging respect, and the very tactics that had once brought victories in the sky were forced to evolve. The Thunderbolt had redefined the rules of aerial engagement. One striking feature of the P-47 was its sheer resilience. Unlike other aircraft that faltered under fire, the Thunderbolt could sustain damage that would ground lesser fighters. Its radial engine, thick fuselage, and armored cockpit allowed pilots to return from missions that seemed impossible. Tales abound of aircraft returning with wings riddled by bullets, fuselages scarred, yet still capable of controlled flight. For the men in the cockpit, this durability was a source of confidence, a psychological edge that often proved decisive in the chaos of combat. But it was not just the physical strength of the Thunderbolt that made it formidable, it was the combination of firepower and strategic application. The 8.50 caliber Browning machine guns, mounted with deadly accuracy, allowed pilots to deliver devastating volleys that could obliterate enemy aircraft in moments. German pilots, who had once laughed at the seemingly cumbersome fighters, soon found themselves at the mercy of a relentless storm of lead. Each encounter became a lesson in humility, a reminder that appearances can deceive, and that underestimating an adversary can carry fatal consequences. The Thunderbolt's effectiveness extended beyond air-to-air combat. Its ability to conduct ground attack missions with precision and destructive power made it an indispensable tool for the Allied forces. Soldiers on the ground frequently witnessed the aircraft's strafing runs, each one leaving a trail of devastation against enemy positions, supply lines, and fortifications. The combination of heavy armament, durability, and speed made it ideal for missions where other fighters might have faltered, cementing its reputation as a versatile and reliable weapon of war. Historical records and pilot memoirs reflect the profound impact of the Thunderbolt on the war effort. Its presence altered Luftwaffe tactics, forcing German pilots to adapt to a threat that could no longer be dismissed. Entire squadrons were trained to exploit the Thunderbolt's strengths, coordinating attacks that combined air superiority with close support for ground forces. The lessons learned in these skies were not just tactical but strategic, influencing the broader course of the air campaign and the eventual outcome of battles across Europe. Beyond the immediate theaters of war, the P-47 left a legacy that extended into the philosophy of aircraft design and aerial warfare. Its success challenged traditional notions of fighter superiority, which had often emphasized speed and maneuverability above all else. The Thunderbolt demonstrated that endurance, firepower, and protection could be equally decisive factors, reshaping the approach to combat aircraft development. Future generations of warplanes would carry forward the lessons learned from its design, embodying a balance of strength, survivability, and tactical versatility. Yet, amid the statistics and strategic analysis, the human stories remain the most compelling. Pilots like Lieutenant James "Jimmy" Harrington, who described his first encounter with a formation of Bf-109s over Cologne, bring the narrative to life. The fear, adrenaline, and exhilaration experienced in those split-second decisions capture the essence of aerial combat. Pilots learn to trust their aircraft, to leverage its power, and to confront danger with a blend of skill and instinct. These experiences, retold in letters, memoirs, and oral histories, preserve the emotional core of the Thunderbolt's legacy. The Thunderbolt also became a symbol of American ingenuity and industrial might. Its design reflected a pragmatic approach to wartime needs, a fighter that could endure, deliver, and return. It was not the sleekest, nor the most elegant, but it was effective. The P-47's ability to survive and excel under conditions that would have grounded other aircraft embodied the resilience and resourcefulness that defined the Allied war effort. Each mission flown was a testament to engineering foresight, pilot courage, and the capacity to turn perceived weakness into overwhelming strength. As the years passed and the war concluded, the Thunderbolt's contributions were recognized not just in combat reports, but in the enduring respect of the men who flew alongside and against it. German pilots, once dismissive, recounted their encounters with a mixture of awe and frustration. American pilots, meanwhile, celebrated the aircraft as a reliable companion and formidable weapon. Its story transcends the immediate context of battle, offering lessons in strategy, innovation, and the human dimensions of warfare. In reflecting on the Thunderbolt's impact, it becomes clear that its significance lies not only in its victories, but in its ability to reshape perception. The aircraft's initial ridicule became a narrative of transformation, illustrating how courage, technology, and tactical insight can overturn expectation. Its legacy serves as a reminder that true power often emerges where it is least anticipated, and that underestimation can carry profound consequences in both war and life. The Thunderbolt's influence extended beyond World War II. Its design principles informed post-war aviation, shaping the development of fighter bombers that emphasized durability, firepower, and versatility. The lessons learned from its deployment, about strategy, pilot training, and the balance between speed and resilience, continued to resonate in military thinking for decades. The P-47 was more than a machine. It was a benchmark, a symbol of what could be achieved when engineering and human courage intersected. The story of the P-47 Thunderbolt also highlights the interplay between perception and reality in the theater of war. What was once derided as a bulky, inelegant milk bottle became a nightmare for experienced enemy pilots. Its transformation from object of mockery to revered instrument of combat exemplifies the unpredictable nature of conflict, where assumptions are challenged and adaptability is rewarded. The Thunderbolt's journey underscores a fundamental truth. In warfare, as in life, strength often comes from unexpected places, and resilience can redefine the outcome of even the most daunting confrontations. Ultimately, the Thunderbolt's legacy is preserved not only in technical specifications or battle reports, but in the stories of those who experienced its might firsthand.